Hello, it's week 21 of season 6 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Aunt Bee Learns to Drive. Barney, what's going on this week?
Aunt Bee wants Andy to drive her over to Clara's house one morning, but he says he's late, and he says he needs to go in the other direction anyway. So she grudgingly says that she'll work it out. And then later that day, she sees a car that Gooder is selling for $295. And she says she might be interested. And Gooder says he'll bring the car over tonight to show Andy after Aunt Bee has had a chance to tell him about her idea of owning a car.
So she has Helen over to supper that night. She makes pork chops to put Andy in a good mood. And then she and Helen start building their case to Andy about how Aunt Bee's always a burden, wanting to be driven around by him.
But before they can even get Andy to agree to that, Gooder shows up too early with the car. And Andy says definitely not. Aunt Bee is not the type of woman to drive a car. He says it's a bad idea for her to try to learn to drive at this age. But Helen and Gooder and Aunt Bee and Ultie keep griping at him until he gives in, even though he says he's still against it.
And the next day, Andy tells Floyd that Goober's going to teach Aunt Bee how to drive. And then we see her sitting behind the wheel with the first lesson starting, the wheel of the car that she wants to buy from Goober.
Yeah, he explains the pedals and the gears to her, but when she starts driving, she's real rough on the clutch and on the brake. She constantly stops and starts suddenly. She even drives over curves. She's terrible, but she still wants another lesson tomorrow at the same time. And when she leaves, Goober slides over to the driver's seat, and then he puts his head in his hands. After a few more lessons, though, she gets better slowly, and Andy tells Gooder, be sure to teach her all the rules of the road, 'cause she's got her driving test tomorrow.
But then the tree cutter from Mayberry City needs her to move her car about 8 feet so he can work on it. And she says no, she can't even do it that much because she's not a licensed driver, so could he please move it? He says no, he's not allowed to move other people's cars while he's on the job.
So she gets in the car, but she puts it in reverse instead of forward, and she backs into a tree. And now she's scared of what Andy will do, because she's not a licensed driver. And Helen tells her the only thing to do is just to go tell Andy the truth. So she goes and takes him a nice lunch in the courthouse to get him in a good mood, and he compliments her on the good retorts that Gooder has been giving him on her more recent lessons. So now she don't have the heart to tell him.
So she covers the dent with Obie's tent as a temporary solution. And then Andy's driving home, and he's griping at a bicyclist to get out of the middle of the street. And while he's watching the bicyclist, he's not watching where he's going, and he drives into the back of Aunt Bee's car.
And then Opie comes up, and he tells his pa why Aunt Bee said the tent was there. She said it was to keep tree sap off the car. And Andy says, well, then it should be moved under the trunk some more. And when he moves it, he sees the dent, and he thinks he must have done it when he hit Aunt Bee's car. So he goes in to apologize to her about it, and he says he'll pay to have it fixed. And she lets it go at that for a few minutes, but then she feels guilty, and she tells Andy how the dent really got there. And he says, well, if he can run into a thumper, she can run into a tree. He'll still let her take the driving test.
So she passes the driving test, and then Andy lets her buy the car. And right away she tells Goober all these plans she has to bring in the car for all kinds of maintenance. She's really into it.
And then she takes Andy and Helen and Goober and Floyd and Ultie on a drive, but she's still jerking and stopping and starting a lot.
We'll see you next week for episode 22.